Lauren, I'm 21, grew up in Buckinghamshire, currently a student at Portsmouth University and living in Hampshire.
I am Kyle, I'm 24, grew up in Buckinghamshire and Aylesbury, currently living in Aylesbury, and I am currently a barman.
Personally, I think it makes me quite angry that the people that are struggling with mental health get a very limited and capped service when it's so rife in our community. I do agree though that cancer sufferers should get a great funding and support like they do, but I think that mental health also requires this amount of significance, because especially as like the rate of suicide is so high, and obviously especially in men, which isn't spoken of nearly enough in our society. So I do think more funding is like required, and probably on the same level of cancer, because it is something that is killing people.
Yeah. I think it should be more. Equal to cancer, I'm not sure. Just because cancer, you have to factor in the fact that it is a physical disease as well as a mental disease. So you are fighting on two fronts when it comes to cancer. But that being said, the funding for mental health has not been nearly what it should be. I think that's partly due to the fact that only very recently in society has it been accepted as something that needs to be treated. And unfortunately, these things take time. It doesn't help when your government constantly cuts funding to the NHS, which, you know, a large majority of our population uses, because we don't all have the capacity or the capital to go to private places and sort mental health issues out that way. So I think, you know, does it make me angry? Kind of, it does make me angry, but at the same time, it's not as if it isn't changing, however slowly. Hopefully it will speed up though. We shall have to wait and see.
I personally think that must be very, very hard to get out of that system, purely because I think it's kind of becomes a cycle. You know, if you're trying to get out of the system, you need to work more, but by working more, you're not in their
little catchment.
You're not in that. So you then lose out on that extra money that has been helping you to cope. Mm-hmm. So, you know, childcare is so expensive, and you only get a certain amount free anyway. So needing to work more to try and get out of that cycle is just even harder, because you do have things such as food and just daily life expenses. And I think, you know, for a family, if you have 4 young children who all need childcare and you're trying to get out of the system, it just, especially if you're a single parent, it's just, I do feel like you just get caught in a catch-22, because to get out, you need to work more, but by working more, you get less support. So it's just, I think it must be so hard to try and overcome that.
I think it is, though I think it's possible, yes, but I think it's very, very difficult, exponentially so when you're a single parent, because then you've only got one income, one source of benefit. It's just a very tough situation, especially when you think, well, obviously the easiest answer to that question is it escapable? Yes, when the children grow up. But that's a whole different thing. Then you're adding into the fact that these children won't grow up in the best environment financially. They might not, and as a result, they might not be in the best area or go to the best schools. So then they won't get the best opportunity. So then it becomes a generational problem. Once it becomes a generational problem, you go, well, when does it stop? So it's one of those things where, do I think benefits should be more? Not necessarily more, but you should be investing into the communities that are benefit heavy. You should be investing into the areas in the schools where, you know, the infrastructure needs improving. You've got all of these people that are trapped in this system, not necessarily through fault of their own, given there probably are some people that are like that, but, you know, if you've grown up in a single parent family, not gone to the best school or made the best connections, and as a result you've not had the best education, you're not going to get the best opportunity so that you can get a job that lifts your family out of this situation.
It does make sense, but I do really think, especially now, that nurses deserve so much more money and credit for what they do. Like, they put in so much time and effort, and I know they haven't gone through the same route as GPs and heart surgeons, but they do the best of their job, and they're keeping people alive and everything. And I do think they shouldn't earn necessarily the same amount as GPs and heart surgeons, but I do think that because it's not about comparing, it's just more about they are extremely underpaid.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's not about, obviously not everyone in the NHS or in healthcare should be provided with the same amount of money, but it should be more reasonable rather than just because they're the top, they need to get the most amount of money, when actually nurses, a lot of nurses do struggle to get by, and that just shouldn't be the case, because they put in so much time and energy. They work 12 plus hour shifts and get nowhere near as much support that they do need.
This is an issue that at the base of it surrounds around funding to the NHS. Obviously that, like as I mentioned before, it's just been cut year after year, so obviously the people that are going to end up not getting paid properly are the ones that are unfortunately at the lower scale, which is a very roundabout way of doing it, but it is the way that we tend to do things in this country. As it goes, I think it makes sense. It kind of does make sense in the system. Obviously we're a capitalist country, so if you spend loads of time and effort mastering a trade at university and you spend loads of money becoming a heart surgeon, do I think you should be compensated for it? Yeah, because you've got a skill that not many people have. Not many people can say they're a heart surgeon, and as a result you can charge more for it. Onto nurses though, they should definitely be paid way more than they are. I don't know where that money's going to come from, but I think we can all agree that they deserve it. They work ridiculous hours. They're under way more stress. And also, I know for a fact that if a doctor tells a nurse to do something, the blame often falls onto the nurse, even if the doctor is wrong after they do it, which, must wreak havoc on your mental health if you're liable for somebody else's decision and you have no control over it, and you're also in a worse position than them anyway because you're getting paid less. Yada yada yada. That list goes on. Is it strange that GPs get it? Yeah, because they don't necessarily have the same, I say, skill as a heart surgeon, because it seems a bit more dramatic. Technical. But they do have a very important job with regards to keeping people out of the main hospitals and with minor, things that aren't as important but still require a general practitioner to attend to. They do have an insane amount of knowledge on illnesses and the like. So but also as well, GPs very often own their own clinics, and as a result they can pay themselves what they want because that's what they get.
My name is Maria Lovett. I am 24 years old. I've grown up in North Oxford, and I am a graduating photojournalism and documentary photography student. I think, taking Oxford as an example, there was a study in 2012 that basically showed that in a 30-year period, most people between the ages of 18 to 25, they committed suicide, 45 men and 16 women, which was already a massive difference in numbers. Another interesting thing that this study found was that this number peaks not just in university students, but also in sort of the younger generation generally. This number peaks right across exam periods. So it says a lot about the pressures that we're putting on ourselves and parents are putting on kids, and how important it is to do well on the sort of success ladder, as it were. We need to reduce this pressure. We need to encourage creatives. We need to sort of not realise that happiness doesn't come from money. That there's a lot to consider about that. Another thing is that as to why males specifically seem to really struggle with this, is that we live in a world with toxic masculinity being very high, and the sort of, you know, we live in a lad culture, which is not helping. An interesting thing that I realised a couple of days ago actually, which was that the older generation, so the war generation, these statistics in regards to suicides and the difference between males and females, they're non-existent in their brains. Like it's completely not a fact. It's not seen. It's not sought by. It's completely ignored. It's not processed at all in their minds, which is not helping. Encouragements, passing down in generations, which is interesting. We need to change this, because obviously, the next elder generation is, their minds need to be changed now in order to help support the younger generation and my generation, in order to provide support and help within that as well. We need to encourage people talking to therapists, seeking help. It's not a weakness at all. We need to make this perfectly clear and make it acceptable in my generation and the generations to come. Should your postcode determine your right to support? Absolutely not. This is barbaric that this is even a thing. Everyone has the right to support. Everyone should be able to be supported if they so wish, and they should be encouraged to do so. It's not an overnight sort of fix. It's a long-term fix. I think you have to really sort of open up and be willing to share and actually dig deep into yourself in order to get help and find help and realise what's causing everything. It's not an overnight fix. The government's idea of health is a very sort of quick fix scenario. Many health issues don't work like that. They work through time. It needs care, support. Psychological issues don't seem to be deemed as important as opposed to sort of emergency health. If we were to have more psychological support, that could help prevent many things from going wrong in the future just by talking. The evidence is there, all the support's there, the evidence is there in order to support the fact that we are able to prevent a worst case scenario for ourselves in terms of health. I think support needs to be there as a preventative. Also, once things go wrong, it needs to be there, but also it needs to continue to be there in terms of sort of day-to-day support, management. I think to decrease funding for outpatients and home visits and other day-to-day health, it needs to continue. Otherwise, everything will probably spiral out of control, and you'll find yourself on a relapse. Everything will happen again, and it might not necessarily happen to the same person, but it will happen to somebody else. This is massively straining on the NHS, but for some reason the government doesn't seem to see that. There's a massive cause and effect that is completely overlooked. More government spending should be spent on causes, the inevitable causes of lack of support for people before and after as well, as opposed to sort of in the immediate care system as well. These are just as important, these are just as equal, and should be seen as a need. It should be seen as a need to help everyone. It should be easily be available for all, no matter where you're from, no matter what country or county. Everyone is just as important as everyone. Absolutely, definitely. I think, again, taking Oxford as an example, Oxford universities are sort of having to, it's a very science-based and NHS-based university. We've got a lot of medical students here which are doing fantastic work in terms of creating a vaccine and sort of developing ways of getting around it. However, as a result of this, especially at the beginning, because no one knew what was going to happen, they closed down all of the cancer wards in Oxford temporarily. As a result, there were unnecessary deaths which took place. They didn't die of coronavirus, they didn't die of this pandemic, but they died as a consequence of not having support, which is just barbaric. Like, it shouldn't have happened. It did. Globally, this is not the first time this has happened. A pandemic is always a risk. It's always there. It's an underlying threat to everyone, humanity, and it's bizarre actually that we weren't more prepared. It shouldn't. No one expects it, but that shouldn't matter. There should be things in place beforehand, just in case this were to happen again. I'm surprised this was not the case. It seemed at the time that, well, currently everyone's making things up as they go along. They have no idea. It's not a tried and tested thing, but hopefully this, hopefully this can work as a tried and tested plan. But for now, this time around, it with the test subjects, as it were, there have been many deaths that shouldn't have happened. Only now, 2-3 months into this, are serious side effects such as loss of taste and loss of smell. They're only now sort of being deemed as actual serious side effects for this virus, but this was not made public before to the level that it should have been, which could have saved many lives already. It should have been deemed very serious and sort of taken seriously at the beginning, and the government should have acted a lot quicker to put everything in place and to listen to science before any of this.
My name is Luke, I'm 24, I grew up in Hertfordshire and I live in the southwest in Gloucestershire. I work at Wix and I'm also a photographer and social media assistant for a local artist. Approximately 1 in 4 people experience mental health problems in the UK a year, with 1 in 8 of those receiving treatment. The most common is medication. Annually, the expenditure on mental health services has decreased by millions despite the increase in cases. So it's probably not seen as a pressing issue when it should be. There's very few MPs that voice an opinion on it, which is pretty unacceptable. I think we're probably more susceptible to mental health issues in our now more saturated environment, in terms of sort of media pressures and work-life pressures and things like that can lead to things developing. Obviously, other people are more prone to that. 13.3% of white British people receive mental health treatment compared to 7% of BAME groups and 6.2% from black ethnic groups. Yeah, I think traditionally, especially with males, it's sort of seen as a weakness to sort of bear your faults and your feelings, which can lead to sort of being emotions being bottled up and mental health issues then developing from that. Massively, yeah. I think you only have to look at the situation we're in at the moment, where we're being urged to sort of self-isolate and to sort of stay safe by staying at home. It's a lot of people don't realise that that's a privilege to be able to do that. Obviously, if you're homeless, you can't do that. But if you're living in shared accommodation with a lot of other people, that's putting you at a higher risk. Health inequalities by class still play a huge part in the spread of infectious diseases such as tuberculosis. People with lower immune systems who spend longer periods of time with a TB patient, i.e. living in the same house as them, can catch the disease.